what happens when you finally start peeling off these masks, when you stop trying to be the person you think everyone wants you to be? One day, and I know this sounds like something out of a cheesy movie, but I swear, this actually happens. When you catch yourself in the mirror and you see someone you haven't seen in years. That kid, the one who got ridiculously excited about creating something new, who wasn't afraid to ask questions or admit they didn't know something, who said what they thought and felt what they felt without a whole internal committee meeting about whether it was mainly enough. For me, it happened on a completely random Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work, running late as usual, and I glanced up at my reflection. But instead of immediately going into crisis mode about whether I looked professional enough or I seemed confident enough, which had been my mirror routine for years, I just looked. And holy crap, there he was, 8-year-old artist boy, still curious about everything, still a little sensitive, still getting unreasonably excited about creative projects and beautiful things. I realized I'd been so busy trying to become someone stronger that I would completely forgotten how absolutely amazing I already was as a kid. That little boy didn't need to be toughened up or made more traditionally masculine. He just needed permission to exist without an apology. Okay, so I'm sitting here with my third cup of tea today. Don't judge me, it's been a week. And I want to talk to you about something that literally keeps me up at night thinking about it. You know that moment when you're procrastinating on your phone, scrolling through old photos, and suddenly you see a picture of yourself as a kid? Maybe you're 8 years old with that gap-toothed smile that your mom said was distinguished, wearing some absolutely ridiculous outfit, like I'm talking mismatched socks, a tutu over jeans, and a superhero cape because why the hell not? And you're just happy. Like stupidly, purely, I just found the coolest rock in the universe happy. And for just a second, you think, holy crap, I remember that kid. Not just what they looked like, but who they were. That absolutely fearless little weirdo who would walk up to random kids at the playground and be like, wanna be friends? Who would spend 3 hours making mud pies because that was important business? Who didn't spend 17 minutes crafting the perfect text response because they were worried about seeming too eager? Here's the plot twist that going to sound like it came straight from a motivational poster in your dentist's office, but I promise, it's deeper than that. Finding yourself as an adult isn't about becoming someone new. It's actually about excavating who you always were before the world got its grubby little hands on you and started molding you like Play-Doh. See, when we talk about finding ourselves, we usually think about adding things, learning new skills, trying new hobbies, maybe taking a personality test or going on some spiritual journey. But what if I told you that finding yourself is actually about subtraction, about taking things away? What if the real you, the person you're meant to be, is already there, just buried under years of other people's expectations, society's rules, and all the masks you've learned to wear to fit in? That's what we're talking about today. So grab a coffee or a tea, get comfortable, and let's figure it out how to get back to that kid in the photo. Let me start with a story that will probably make you realize I was an absolute nightmare of a child. When I was 7, I was obsessed with art. And I don't mean it like to doodle. I mean I was that kid who would spend hours drawing elaborate fantasy worlds, creating comic books, and turning every homework assigned me into some kind of artistic masterpiece, and even when I was supposed to be about math. I mean, I had characters. There was Captain Lightning, who could control storms, and Shadow, the mysterious anti-hero who was definitely going through some stuff. I would create these massive stories with plot twists and character development like I was the next Stan Lee in training. Now here's where the story gets spicy. I was a boy who loved art more than sports, and back in the day, we're talking early 2000s here, people had very specific ideas about what boys were supposed to be like. Think football, action figures, being tough and competitive. Basically the opposite of a sensitive kid who could spend 45 minutes perfecting the shading on a dragon's wing. I remember the exact moment my little artistic heart got crushed into tiny pencil shavings. 3rd grade, and I brought my latest comic book creation to show my friends. I was so excited. This thing had like 12 pages and a legitimate plot twist. And then this kid, let's call him Brad because there's always a Brad, looked at my comic and said, art is for girls. Why don't you like normal boy stuff like sports? The audacity, the absolute audacity of the 7-year-old to come for me and my artistic vision. But here's what messed me up. The other guy started nodding along, not being mean necessarily, just kids being kids, but in that moment, 8-year-old me learned something that would stick with me for years. Parts of who I was weren't acceptable for boys. So I did what any self-respecting third grader would do. I panicked and immediately started my career as a professional people pleaser. I put on my first official mask, the normal guy mask, complete with fake interest in sports I found boring, pretending I didn't notice beautiful sunsets or get emotional about movies, and slowly, quietly putting all my art supplies in a box in my closet. Does this sound familiar? Maybe your version was in art and an existential crisis in elementary school. Maybe you love reading but got told that wasn't masculine enough. You should be outside playing sports, not inside with books. Maybe you were naturally sensitive and empathetic, but everyone kept telling you to toughen up and boys don't cry until you felt broken. Maybe you were super emotional, which, by the way, is a superpower, but you learned that having feelings made you weak or too soft. Whatever it was, you learned to tuck away pieces of yourself and put on this mask instead. The tough guy mask, where you were never vulnerable, never admit you're scared or sad, and definitely never showed that you actually care about things deeply. The cool dude mask, pretending you didn't care about things you deeply care about, because caring was apparently not masculine enough. The provider mask, always fixing everyone else's problem, being the strong one, basically becoming everyone's emotional rock when you're crumbling inside. The I have my life together mask. You know, the one where you pretend you understand how to change oil and you have strong opinions about power tools, and definitely don't cry during Pixar movies more often than you like to admit. Here's what nobody tells you about masks. They are exhausting. Every single one requires you to monitor yourself constantly. Am I saying the right thing? Do I look okay? Are they buying this version of me? And after years of wearing them, something really messed up happens. You start to forget which parts are the mask and which parts are really you. Okay, so real talk time. I spent my entire 20s being this person I thought I was supposed to be. The ambitious professional who wore suits and knew how to talk business and dating, who looked amazing on paper but had about as much depth as a puddle. I was miserable, you guys. Like, successfully by metric, I've been brainwashed into thinking mattered, but internally I felt like I was slowly dying. I'd wake up some mornings and literally not know what I wanted to for breakfast because I spent so long eating what I thought successful guys ate. Well, successful men probably eat protein-packed breakfast and drink black coffee, not tea, while watching cartoons. Even though tea and cartoons made me genuinely happy and black coffee tastes like liquid sadness. The crazy part? I thought the solution was to find myself by adding more achievements, more experiences, more stuff to fill this weird emptiness I felt. It took me way too long to realize that emptiness wasn't because something was missing. It was because the real me was suffocating under all these layers I'd built up to protect her. Let's talk about expectations, because they're probably doing more psychological damage than your high school math teacher who said you would never amount to anything without algebra. From the moment we're born, everyone has opinions about who we should be. Your parents have dreams for you, usually based on their own fears and all the stuff they didn't get to do. Teachers put you in little label boxes based on whether you can sit still and follow directions. Your friends expect you to stay exactly the same as you were in high school, like you're some kind of personality time capsule. And society? Oh boy, society has a whole Pinterest board of expectations for you. You should have your life figured out by 25, married by 30, homeowner by 35, and then definitely post the aesthetically pleasing photos of your avocado toast and your Sunday self-care routine. But here's the really messed up part. Most of these expectations aren't even spoken out loud. They're just floating around in the air like invisible rules that everyone somehow absorbed through osmosis. And if you don't follow them, you feel like you're failing at being a human. You know what I'm talking about. The unspoken rule that you should have your life figured out by 30. That you should want to get married and have kids. That you should climb the corporate ladder. That you should buy a house, have a stable career, post happy photos on social media. Okay, story time. I'm gonna tell you about my friend Sarah, who is an absolute legend now, but we went through some stuff to get there. Sarah spent 8 years in medical school. 8. That's like 2 entire college experiences. Her parents had been talking about how proud they would be to have a doctor in the family since she was old enough to hold a toy stethoscope. Our daughter, the doctor, became their entire personality at dinner parties. But here's the plot twist nobody saw coming. Sarah was absolutely, completely, so crushingly miserable. Like, she would sit sit in anatomy class dissecting cadavers and thinking, this is fine, this is what I'm supposed to want. Why do I feel like I'm slowly dying inside? Turns out she would always wanted to be a teacher, like always. She would light up when she was tutoring other students, got genuinely excited about those moments when someone finally understood a concept, loved working with kids. But she would be completely convinced herself that teaching wasn't successful enough or prestigious enough or impressive enough at cocktail parties. It took her until she was 32 to finally admit that she would be living in someone else's dream. She's a teacher now, by the way. Makes less money, works longer hours, and she's the happiest I've ever seen her. But here's what gets me. She'd spent years feeling like failure because she wasn't happy doing what she was supposed to do. Like there was something wrong with her for not wanting to what everybody expect her to want. How many of you are doing that right now? Living up to expectations that aren't even yours. Maybe you're in a career that looks good on paper but makes you feel dead inside. Maybe you're in a relationship because it makes sense, not because it makes you happy. Maybe you're living in a city because that's where successful people live, even though you dream about somewhere quieter. Maybe you're saving money for things you don't actually want because that's what responsible adults do. And the worst part, you probably don't even realize you're doing it. These expectations become so much a part of how we think that we mistake them for our own desires. I remember the exact moment I realized how deep this programming went. Picture this, I'm standing in Starbucks, already running late because I'd spent 20 minutes choosing an outfit that said effortlessly put together professional, and the barista asks what I want. Simple question, right? Wrong. I completely froze, like full-on deer in headlight mode. Not because there were too many options, but because I genuinely had no idea what I actually wanted. My brain was like a broken computer. Wow, you usually get the skinny vanilla latte because that's what healthy, conscious people drink. But maybe you should get what Jessica always gets because that seems more sophisticated. Oh wait, what about something Instagrammable? Successful people probably drink cold brew, right? Meanwhile, the barista is staring at me like I'm having some kind of caffeine-related breakdown. And there's a line of people behind me who probably think I'm having an existential crisis over milk alternative, which to be fair, I kind of was. I ended up ordering my usual and walking away feeling this weird sense of panic. What if I couldn't figure out what coffee I wanted? How I was supposed to figure out what I wanted from my life? That's when it hit me. I'd spent so many years asking what should I want that I completely lost touch with what do I actually want. The good news, that little kid used to be the one who knew exactly what they wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. There is still in there. They've just been quiet for a while because every time they spoke up, they got told to sit down. But here's what I've learned. They never actually left. They're just being awaited. So how do you dig yourself out of this psychological prison you've accidentally built? How do you find out that kid who used to know exactly what they wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for 17 desserts at a restaurant? It starts with unlearning, and let me tell you, unlearning is like trying to untangle Christmas lights that have been in storage for a year. It's way harder than it should be, it's frustrating, but oh my god, the relief when you finally get them separated. Think about your brain like it's your closet. Over the years you've been stuffing it full of things. Some of it is genuinely useful, like how to parallel park without having panic attack, or how to make pasta without burning water. But a lot of it is just junk that other people convinced you that you needed. There are beliefs crammed in there that aren't even yours. Success means working 60-hour weeks and being exhausted all the time. You should always say yes to everything or people won't like you. Showing emotion is unprofessional. You're not constantly productive. You're basically garbage. Wow, those beliefs are like those jeans you keep in your closet that haven't fitted you since 2019. But you're holding on to them just in case. Except instead of jeans, it's psychological baggage that's making you miserable. Unlearning means going through that closet and being honest about what's actually yours and what you're just holding onto because you think you should. Here's how this actually works in real life, and I want you to start small because we're not trying to have a complete personality makeover overnight like we're in some cheesy rom-com montage. You start noticing, like really notice. Notice when you automatically say I'm fine when someone asks you how you are, even though you're internally screaming because your landlord raised your rent and your car made a weird noise this morning. Notice Notice when you order the salad at dinner because it seems healthy, even though you really want the pasta and the pasta would make you genuinely happy. Notice when you laugh at jokes that aren't funny because everyone else is laughing and you don't want to be the weird one who doesn't get it. Notice when you say yes to plans that make you want to fake your own death just to get out of them. These seem like tiny, insignificant things, but they are huge because every single time you choose what you think you should want over what you actually want, you're basically telling yourself, hey, your feelings and preferences don't matter. Other people's approval is more important than your happiness. And that's some messed up messaging to be sending to your own brain. Oh my god, okay, I have to tell you about my music revelation because it's going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but it changed my life. So I realized I'd been listening to music that I thought made me seem cool and sophisticated. Like I had this whole Spotify playlist full of indie rock and obscure jazz artists and whatever was trending in my social circle. Music that made me seem interesting at parties when someone inevitably asked about my music taste. But then one day I'm cleaning my apartment, just me, nobody around to judge, and I catch myself humming Since You Begun by Kelly Clarkson. And then I start belting it, like full-on American Idol audition level commitment to this song. And I realized I felt more like myself in that moment than I had in months. So I made myself a secret playlist, and I'm talking secret, like FBI level security on this thing, of songs that actually made me happy. Not songs that made me seem cool or cultured, but songs that made me want to dance around my kitchen like a maniac. It was full of Disney songs, early 2000s pop, songs from musicals, that one song from TikTok that everyone pretends to hate but secretly loves. Basically, if it made me feel joy, it went to the list. And listening to music I actually enjoyed instead of music I thought I should enjoy. It was like, you know when you're being holding your breath and you finally exhale? It was exactly like that. Once you start unlearning in small ways, bigger things start to shift. You start saying not to things that drain you, even if they're good opportunities. You start pursuing hobbies that bring you joy, even if they are not impressive. You start expressing opinions that are actually yours, not ones you think people want you to hear. You start setting boundaries, which is terrifying at first, but incredibly freeing. But here's the thing nobody warns you about. Unlearning is uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. Because when you start taking off the masks, people notice. The people who benefited from your people pleasing might not like your boundaries. The people who were used to you always agreeing might be confused when you start having your own opinions. Some relationships will change. Some might even end, and that's scary, I know. But here's what I wish someone had told me. The relationships that can't survive you being authentic were not really relationships with you anyway. They were relationships with the mask you were wearing. The people who truly care about you and want you to know the real you, they want to see you happy and authentic, even if it means you're different from who they thought you were. And the people who don't, well, you're too busy being genuinely happy to spend much time worrying about them. Let's talk about something that nobody really discusses enough: how absolutely exhausting it is to constantly monitor yourself like your own personal FBI agent. Always calculating. Will this make them think I'm weird? Will they think I'm too much? Too little? Will they still like me if I admit I don't actually understand cryptocurrency? What if I uttered the wrong thing? What if my laugh is too loud? What if I'm not laughing enough? I used to rehearse conversations in my head, not just job interviews or difficult conversations. I'm talking about casual small talk. I literally practice what I say if someone asks me about my weekend, how I respond to how's your work going, what funny stories I could tell them that would make me seem relatable but not overshadowing. Living like that is like being the star, director, and critic of your own one-person show every single day. And the reviews are always mixed because you can never quite figure it out what the audience wants. And here's the absolute cruelest irony. Most of the time, people can totally sense when you're putting on a performance. That carefully crafted, calculated version of yourself that you think is so appealing, it usually comes across as fake or distant or just off somehow. Meanwhile, the real you, the messy, imperfect, genuine you, is usually way more lovable than the performance you've been putting on. Oh, I have to tell you about this memory that perfectly captures how ridiculous I was being. Picture this: college party, I'm a sophomore, and I spent literally an hour getting ready, not just physically, though there was definitely some aggressive hair teasing happening, but mentally preparing. I had conversation topics prepared, jokes ready to deploy at appropriate moments, and a whole freaking character mapped out. I was like a method actor preparing for the role of cool college girl who definitely has her life together. But then, plot twist, someone spills red wine all over my white shirt. My carefully crafted white shirt that was supposed to say effortlessly chic, and I just completely lost it. I'm talking full meltdown, not pretty, Instagram worthy crying. I'm talking ugly, snotty, frustrated, sobbing in the middle of this party because I was so tired of pretending to be this cool, collected person when I was just an anxious mess who color incarnated his anxiety. I was mortified. I thought everyone would think I was unhinged or dramatic or just way too much. But you know what actually happened? 3 different people immediately came over to me to help clean up the stain. Someone gave me their jacket to wear, and for the rest of the night, I had the most genuine, real, honest to God, good conversations I had had in months. Because finally, people were talking to me, not to whatever performance I'd be putting on since I walked through that door. That's when I started to understand something crucial. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's actually courage. It takes courage to show people who you really are, especially when you're not sure they will like what they see. But here's the thing. When you stop walking on eggshells, when you stop trying to manage everyone else's emotions and reactions, something amazing happens. You find your people. The ones who appreciate your weird sense of humor. The ones who love how passionate you get about things others find boring. The ones who aren't put off by your struggles or your imperfections. The ones who see the real you and think, yeah, this person gets it. Learning to stop walking on eggshells starts with small risk, well, really small. So you can share an opinion that's totally yours, even if it's not popular. Tell someone when you're having a hard time instead of saying everything's fine. Admit when you don't know something instead of pretending you do. Say no to plans without making up elaborate excuses. Just, I can't make it, or that doesn't work for me. Each time you do that, you're proving to yourself that you can handle other people's reactions. Most of the time, their reactions aren't nearly as bad as you imagine. And when they are, you learn that you're stronger than you thought. The goal isn't to become selfish and inconsiderate. It's to become genuine. To let people see who you actually are instead of who you think they want you to be. And trust me, the relief of not having to keep track of those different versions of yourself is incredible. So what happens when you start unlearning? When you start taking off the mask, when you stop walking on eggshells? One day, and this might sound dramatic, but I swear it is true, you look in the mirror and you just recognize someone you haven't seen in years. That kid, the one who got excited about simple things, who wasn't afraid to try stuff, who said what they thought and felt what they felt without apologizing for it. Here's what I want you to consider. What if that kid was right about you? What if the things that excited you, the way that you saw the world, the dreams you had, what if those weren't childish things to outgrow, but essentially parts of who you are? What if growing up doesn't have to mean growing away from yourself or becoming emotionally unavailable? The beautiful thing about this journey back to yourself is that it's not about becoming someone new. You're not broken and in need of fixing. You're not missing some crucial piece of masculinity that you need to find somewhere else. Everything you need is already there. You just have to remember how to access it. And the best part, that kid is still in there, waiting. He's been patient, but he's ready to come out and create again. He's ready to be curious, to try things, to feel deeply, to dream big. He's ready to be unapologetically, authentically you. So here's my challenge for you. This week, I want you to do one thing that 8-year-old would have loved. Just one thing. Maybe it's drawing, even if you think you're not artistic. Maybe it's dancing in your own kitchen while making dinner and not caring if the neighbors see. Maybe it's reading a fantasy book that's beneath your level. Maybe it's having a genuine conversation with a stranger. Maybe it's saying no to something that doesn't feel right, even if people expect you to just man up and deal with that. Whatever it is, do it for that kid. Do it as a practice for being who you really are instead of who you think you should be. And remember, finding yourself isn't about adding more to your life or becoming more masculine. It's about subtracting everything that isn't really you until what's left is so genuinely, authentically you that you cannot help but recognize that little boy looking back at you in the mirror. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.